Hey, what's going on, Summoners, and welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Nathaning, and today we'll be talking about the 5 sleeper OP picks and builds that you should be abusing for some free LP. You definitely know the OP popular picks and builds since they're all over social media, including our very own YouTube channel. But in this video, we'll be looking at some of the lesser known builds and picks today. We'll be starting things off with the new obnoxiously tanky build for Samira. I first thought of this build right after the lifesteal nerfs were revealed. I thought, well, if they're gonna hit 2 of Samira's core items and the 2 runes that she runs, how would she even be playable? Surely she'll be hit so hard and become nearly unviable. But she actually moved up in performance ratings, becoming one of the very best ADCs after the patch went live. So I sort of put this on the back burner until I recently did some tests. I only wish I had done so sooner. While Samira is definitely in a perfectly good spot right now, you're walking a tightrope when you play her. If you go in at the wrong time or mess up at the execution of a fight, you can be punished hard. All at lifesteal means nothing if you get your ultimate cancelled or miss a timing on her W. But with this build giving you so much more survivability, you aren't nearly as punishable when you slip up, or just end up in a situation where you couldn't have done any better. Also, you aren't as reliant on your team engaging fights for you. It's definitely not optimal to be a solo frontliner for your team, but sometimes you have to play with the hand that you're dealt. Normally, you want to get your style points up with Samira before jumping into a fight. That way you can ult the second that you slide in with the E, and begin lifestealing. But again, the durability on this build allows you to jump in the fight first thing. If you're clean with your comboing, you can weave in the auto attack between each spell cast and instantly jump up to the S rating, and pop off a lot quicker than you usually would. Now let's look at the build in question. For your runes, you'll take Conqueror, Triumph, Bloodline, Last Stand, Taste of Blood, and Treasure Hunter, with the set runes being attack speed, adaptive force, and armor. For your items, start with Doran's Plate, and then start building into Gore Drinker. You'll go for either Steel Caps or Merc Treads, and work towards a Black Cleaver. Once you get that done, you'll go for Death's Dance. Your last 2 item slots are situational. If you want more damage, standard Samira items like Collector and Lord Dominic's may be good. If you want to further the theme of a beefy bruiser, some good options are Titanic Hydra or Ravenous Hydra, Serix Gage, Maul Mortius, and Spirit Visage. Obviously, this build is going to be doing less damage than the normal full build that you're used to seeing on Samira, but you're trading out that damage for a lot more safety, consistency, and self-sufficiency in fights. This build was tested out on both bot and top lane Samira with pretty good results, so feel free to try it in either lane. If you do give it a go, come back and let us know how it works for you down in the comments below. Also, try this in a normal game first so you can't blame me for griefing your ranked games. Part of what makes sleeper OP picks so successful is the fact that nobody plays them. Objectively speaking, they may not be better or even as good as the most popular picks, but when your opponents don't really know how to play against them, you get that extra edge in the fight. But that alone isn't quite enough to let you win all of your solo queue games. You also need to have the skills to get those early leads and have the know-how to use those leads to win your games. And that's exactly what we try to teach you over at ProGuides.com. Our top tier coaches over at ProGuides.com can help you figure out exactly what you need to work on. They're also available 24/7, so it's never really a bad time to come try one out. I promise, there's at least one that specializes in exactly what you're looking for. These guys have spent years reaching the top of the ladder, so why wouldn't you want to steal all their solo queue tips and tricks? You can find a link to our website down in the description box below. Now let's get back on topic, shall we? The second sleeper pick that we have for you is Nidalee Support. While this pick isn't completely unheard of, it's definitely rare, and something that usually has pretty coin flippy results. But the rare times you do see Nid support, odds are they are being built and played the wrong way. For one, the rune choice. Most Nidalee players try to either play her as a full support with Ahri or Guardian and build her like an enchanter. That's just not great. Her heal is definitely a pretty useful skill, but it's also her only supporty ability, and building completely around it is a little bit silly. The other common thing that people try to do is run Dark Harvest and build for scaling, with items like Ludens, Shadow Flame, and Rabadons. But as a support, Nidalee doesn't really want to necessarily build for scaling. You want to build to spike hard and fast and snowball as fast as you can. So the first big adjustment is bringing Grasp. While it may seem like a minor amount of damage, you'd be surprised how much value you get out of Grasp over the course of the laning phase. It's almost like Scorch, except you can proc it much more often and heals you every time you do. Plus, it also makes you a little bit tankier when it's time to jump in on cat form. The next thing is the mythic choice. Ludens is really good for scaling since it gives a lot more magic pen per legendary item that you complete, but Night Harvester gives you a lot more of an immediate spike. Night Harvester also works better with your cat form, giving you a speed boost to close the gap and jump in on your target after lighting the spear. Anyway, we don't have all day, so before we overanalyze every part of it, here's a full build. For your runes, run Grasp with Undying, Demolish, Conditioning, Revitalize or Unflinching, Eyeball Collection, and Ingenious Hunter, with the set runes being attack speed, armor, and health. For your items, start with the Spell Thief's Edge, Rush Lucidity Boots, and then build into Night Harvester and Zhonya's Hourglass. Zhonya's lets you follow up a spear by jumping in cat form without being instantly blown up after you take down your target. After that, you'll want Rabadons, and then top things off with a Ward Stone. The next pick that we have for you isn't quite as off meta. We'll be taking a look at Urgot mid lane. Being one of the hardest ramping carries in the game, it's no surprise that Urgot is pretty weak early on. There are almost no lanes that he can actually win in the opening stages of the game in the top lane, since the champions there generally excel at extended fights, while Urgot is basically powerless in anything longer than a 2-second trade. That's right, he doesn't last longer than 2 seconds. So why take him mid? Well, the lane is a lot shorter, making it a lot harder for opponents to threaten him to chase you back to your tower. And that's assuming the worst case scenario, where you're in a hard losing matchup. Urgot actually has a better time dealing with mid lane opponents in general. His shield and quick burst of damage from his shotgun knees are well suited to trading against melee champions that a lot of people struggle to deal with in mid. As for mages, you can't really get the lane priority over them, but it's perfectly fine to let them shove you in and then just take the farm under tower. It sure beats getting bullied by a bruiser that zones you out with 4 waves top lane, while your jungler clears the jungle 2 times in a row. So more than really just being an OP sleeper pick that just demolishes his lane, this one is just more about taking Urgot to a safer lane where you can more consistently scale up. Once you've reached that insanely strong point where you've hit 1 to 2 items, you can play him in the side lane like usual and just roll whoever tries to match you. The build that you'll go for will be like any other Urgot game. For your runes, run Press the Attack, Triumph, Tenacity or Bloodline, Last Stand, Conditioning, and Overgrowth, with the stat runes being a double Adaptive Force and Armor or MR. For your items, start with the Doran's Blade and then built into Titanic Hydra, Merc Treads or Steel Caps, and Black Cleaver. After that, you'll want Frostfire Gauntlet, and if you're feeling a little bit feisty, you could spice it up with Prowler's Claw. Top off your build with some beefy stats by going Syrinx Gauge and Gargoyle Stoneplate. Personally, I've always regarded Urgot as one of the very best scaling champions in the game. He can quite literally one-shot squishy champions with a flash flip combo, pumping out insane DPS even against tanks, and is super durable himself, so you can't just one-shot him out of a fight. That brings us to today's question of the day. Who do you think is the truly hardest scaling champion in League? This could be interpreted in a lot of ways. Master Yi, Vayne, and Kog'Maw definitely pump out the craziest single target DPS, but there are a lot of other factors involved. OP map pressure via ganking or split pushing, and also how difficult it is to shut them down in fights are all things to think about. Let us know your answers in the comments down below. Now without further ado, let's get back into it. Taking a look now at an alternative to the usual mage bot lane, we have Ahri as a bot lane carry. I'm sure you've seen a video talking about how building Ahri like an ADC is quote-unquote so OP, but trust me, normal AP Ahri is just fine. It's way more consistent and definitely better for teamfighting. Playing Ahri bot lane solves one big issue that a lot of ADC mains, quite like myself, cry about, the lack of an agency. She has great wave clear, can set up plays with her charm, and has an ultimate to rely on for safety and playmaking in fights. It's best to play her with an engaged support or at least a mage or an aggressive enchanter like Nami, but you can also just get along just fine with passive players as well, and just focus on farming and getting fed later in fights. Now let's look at the build that you'll want. For your runes, run Electrocute, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Transcendence, and Gathering Storm, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For your items, start with the Doran's Ring, and on an early recall, pick up a Dark Seal. Then build your core of Everfrost, Sorcerer's Shoes, and Shadow Flame. Upgrade Seal to Magi's and buy Rabadon's and Void Staff. If you really can't keep the stacks, just trade out Magi's for either Cosmic Drive or Zanya's, but it's pretty easy to keep stacks on her. Finishing off our list, we have a special niche counterpick to melee mid laners. Those champs are by far the most complained about group in the game. Zed, Yasuo, Talon, Irelia, and the list goes on. It's no surprise that people hate them. All the champions in that category can snowball super hard, and they're not very fun to go against. So let me tell you a little bit about Vi mid. While she's always been meta as a jungler, there's always been a very small portion of Vi players that like to play her in solo lanes, and it makes a lot of sense. Her entire character's identity is being a scrappy brawler that just likes to fight non-stop. And that's exactly the type of champion that you need to counter those aforementioned melee mid laners. Those guys usually wait for an opening against squishier, more vulnerable mid laners, but as Vi, there are no such openings. If they go in to hit you, you hit them right back, twice as hard. Not only does Vi do a huge amount of damage with her Q auto E combo, but she also gets a shield from her passive to negate a lot of the damage that your opponent is trying to land on you. Since most melee mid laners have a lot of front-loaded damage, you pretty much already won the trade at this point. But if they keep fighting, the attack speed that you get from proccing your W helps you win even harder. It can be tempting to use your ultimate the second you hit 6, but the best thing that you can do is wait for your jungler for a guaranteed 2-on-1 kill. Alternatively, you can roam and use your ultimate to gank one of the side lanes. Now let's look at the build that you'll want. For the Keystone, it's a pretty close matchup between Electrocute and Halo Blade, so give both a try and see which one feels better for you. For the rest of the runes, run Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, Shield Bash, and Overgrowth, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Health. For your items, start with the Corrupting Potion, then build into the Clips, Steel Caps, and Collector. You can go a number of ways to build after this. For maximum damage, you can go for Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, and Lord Doms. If you want to build a little bit more defensively, some good options are Death's Dance, Syrinx Gauge, and Guardian Angel. I'm definitely more of a fan of going full damage myself. And that wraps things up for our sleeper builds that you don't want to miss out on for patch 12.8. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you sub so you never miss out on our meta guides, and you're always in the loop on what the best picks are. Though this one isn't really meta. These builds are kind of crazy, in my opinion. Like pretty out there. Anyway, remember to let us know what you think is truly the best scaling champion down in the comments below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below, where you can discuss League further or just hang out and be part of the community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.